to Punch Kick Knee with me, Ryan Lee. I'm with my friend Randy King.
Hey, Ryan, how's it going?
Good. The living legend.
Well,
the man himself. The first local person on my show, so I figured at some point we have to bring in Edmontonian.
Right, makes sense.
Yes. You've been around town. You've done a lot of martial arts, self-defense stuff.
Yes.
For like forever.
Forever, yeah.
Forever. Everything. I think I probably used your name at a few nightclubs just to get in.
Sure, yeah.
I think the Druid. I think I cheated my way in there a couple of times there. But you're a well-known guy. But like for the people who aren't from Edmonton, just give a quick, brief intro about yourself.
Sure. My name is Randy King. I'm a personal protection, self-defense, and safety expert. I do courses and programs and keynote speeches literally all around the world. I'm actually going to Australia tomorrow to do a 3-city tour. And I am the co-owner and founder of the Institute of Modern Defense here in Edmonton, where we teach security programs and self-defense.
Awesome. So I caught you right in the nick of time?
Right in the nick of time.
Oh,
I literally tomorrow at 3.
Otherwise, I have to wait 3 weeks
That's right.
to get you. And I'm not a big fan of this whole Zoom thing because it's like, I hate it.
The energy's different. It's totally different. I agree.
It very is. But we have a lot to go through. That's on my back book. So we're just going to go right at it.
Sure, let's do it.
All right. Question number 1. What is one thing most self-defense instructors don't tell their students, but you need to tell them?
Sure. I think, and if you follow any of my content, I say this kind of ad nauseum, but for the new listeners who don't know who I am,
yep.
I think the number one thing that most self-defense instructors don't understand is that 70 to 90% of people who victimize somebody know that person ahead of time. So a lot of courses are caught in this stranger danger type mentality, right? There's some villain in the woods, a monster under your bed. Learn purely physical skills and then you're going to be safe. And that's just not the reality of it. When we look at criminal violence, when we look at the statistics on interpersonal violence or assault or domestic abuse or all that kind of stuff, right? Almost always the person knows the person ahead of time. Especially if you have children, 90% of children know their predator beforehand. So whether it's an acquaintance or a friend or a coworker, a coach, somebody in power, all of this needs to be included in your self-defense program because it's very easy to say, hey, there's a bad guy, I'm the good guy, let's end it. But when it's your grandfather, that's a harder conversation.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of self-defense coaches shy away from this because the information's out there. We're screaming it from the mountaintops. But I do think if you are taking a self-defense program, decide why you're taking it, right? Are you taking it to defend yourself from a street encounter or a bar fight? Are you in a bad relationship? Do you have a toxic work boss? Like all these things are going to kind of change your goals for self-defense.
Oh, yeah.
The number one thing you need to know, one of the major myths I have a book coming out, so I'm getting published. Not for real. I can't say the publisher's name yet, but I did the air quotes, not you. I am getting published, which is pretty cool. And in the book, that's our number one myth, right? Number one myth is understand that you're probably going to know the person that's trying to harm you.
Gotcha.
And it makes things harder.
Interesting, actually. Yeah, I sometimes I can kind of forget.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think gets people killed more often? Lack of technique or lack of awareness?
So 100% lack of awareness. If we're talking just in general, like you can get hit by a bus or a car if you're not paying attention, right? If we're talking in like a self-defense encounter, I would still say awareness. Awareness, no matter how good you are, no matter how skilled you are, technique won't take you past it. And there's people every day who have no training to defend themselves. And some of the most trained people in the world still get killed. So awareness is going to be doesn't matter what style you pick. If you're not paying attention, you can't access your skills. So definitely awareness over tech.
Nope. I definitely agree with that one, actually. We're ripping right through it.
Boom.
No kidding. We have a lot to cover.
There's a lot of questions here.
There's a lot of questions here. Do you believe every person has the right to defend themselves, even if it means using deadly force? Where do you draw a line? I know you talk about this a lot on your program.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I do believe everybody has the right to defend themselves I believe it's a basic human right to feel safe. I know it's not like not nature's law, but I believe as a society we should be doing that. I think up to and including deadly force. And I'm just going to quote the great Mal from Firefly. If somebody's trying to kill you, you go on and kill them right back. In any self-defense encounter, I know we're going to talk about it later, but people get kind of scared about legal parts. And so people are like, oh, I can't kill somebody. But if somebody is trying to end your life, you can meet them with equal force. So if they're trying to kill you, you can try to stop them from doing that, including using lethal force. This is a self-defense situation, obviously not a murder situation. You can't be the aggressor. But yes, I do believe, number one, everybody should have self-defense. And number two, even up to lethal force. Because if it comes down to you or them, then on you.
That's totally fair. Absolutely. Let's see. Can someone freeze in a real situation even after years of training?
100%.
But how do you fix it?
Sure. This is a big question. So I think that's probably why it's on here. I talk about freezing a lot on my channels. And because it happened to me when I was a bouncer, when I was doing bodyguard work, I would freeze in situations that were unknown or foreign to me. So even if you have the most amount of training on the planet, there's going to be other things in the environment that might cause your brain to stop doing what you're doing, right? So for example, I started in Taekwondo. And then I thought I was the coolest, most powerful person on the planet, became a bouncer, got beat up by an old guy. Now, why that's important is that, number one, the martial arts failed me. But number two is that just that guy's BO was something I wasn't trained for. Because where I trained, everybody showered and washed their gis.
Yeah, no,
right?
That's fair, yeah.
So just a wave of like ancient beer and body odor like took me out of the zone. And I think that's what freezing is, right? Freezing is your brain taking a minute to decide what the best course of action is. I use a 3 freeze model. So we have detection freeze, which is something happens. So I go, boo, and you go, that's a detection freeze, right? That's kind of where your flinches exist, that sort of thing. Then there's something we call the shock freeze. A shock freeze is something happens that you know, but it happens in a way you didn't expect. So for example, the first time I got punched in the face by rings, it took my brain a minute because I'd only been hit by gloves, right? When I was training.
Yeah.
So that first hit with the rings, I was like, whoa. My brain was like, I know what this is, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So that's shock. This can also happen in a situation like, let's say you're at work and there's a creepy human hitting on you. Then at the Christmas party, they go from creepy hitting on you to like grabbing you. You might freeze because that's not what you expected to happen. And then we have what's called the overwhelmed freeze. This is the most aggressive freeze. This pretty much shuts you down for the entire encounter. Training will help delay freezes and drop the depth and duration of freeze. Trauma does the opposite.
Okay.
So if you're highly traumatized, if I go boo, you might go into an overwhelmed freeze. If you are highly trained, I might go boo and nothing happened, right? 2 for flinching, the game you play when you're a little kid, right? That's training you to not react in that way. But it is a training model that helps us get past that freeze. The only way you can lessen your freeze is through training, and is through training in environments that are as close to the theater of combat you're going to be in. So a lot of people like to say sparring is like the ultimate level of training, and I'm not saying it's not up there. But if you're doing this in a place where the environment's not controlled, so outside of a ring, you want to add scenario training in as well, right? So just in case that guy pulls a weapon or you have strobe lights on, the more things you can add into your body from the environment, the better off you're going to perform under stress and under a freeze. Because the freeze is your brain trying to catch up. So if you already have that stuff preloaded, you're not going to enter that psychological freeze.
Gotcha.
But again, on an overwhelmed freeze, so let's say sexual assault, for example, a lot of women do nothing, they freeze.
Yeah.
And then a lot of self-defense coaches are like, oh, you shouldn't do that. But their brain did the thing that let them survive.
Yes.
And you can't survive wrong. So that was the thing you should have done.
Yeah.
So people get really confused about this. The freeze is beneficial. We kind of demonize it. But back when we were evolving, if a tiger roared, you didn't move, you didn't get eaten.
Yeah, and the tiger just stops.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
that's why everybody has this in them, right? But again, your experience in the area, I have a little story. I'm not going to use his name, but we had a very decorated kickboxer who used to work for my security team when I had a security team. I like to say he had more titles in a bookstore. And he was, as a bouncer, was not as effective as he was as a Muay Thai fighter. Right? Because he didn't have the affordances of the multiple people, the drunks, the size differences, right? So he did fine. He got through it. But the first 4 or 5 seconds of his first fight, we had to save him.
Yeah.
Then he kicked in, then he started just mowing people down. but that's what I'm saying. So even that high level of training, if you enter a theater or you enter an environment with different stimulus you're not used to, your brain might glitch a little bit.
Yeah. No, definitely. Like when you were giving out that statement there, so it just reminds me of myself. Like,
Yeah.
Like I've been a balancer too. Like,
Yes.
as well as like there's like moments like what are you like? I remember this like I was fighting the back at White Adam, just like I threw people out so I wouldn't fight.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
I was trying to break the fight. Like what I should have done was grapple the guy down, but like, for some reason I just stood there. I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I just froze. I couldn't believe it.
It happens to everybody, right? Like, this is what I think people need to lose. Is there's like a macho thought process that freezing is wrong.
Yeah.
And it's not. I worked with some of the coolest people in the world. I was at a camp with a Delta Force guy, and he told me he freezes too. But it's like a mini, tiny freeze, so you can reduce it, but you can't eliminate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. So not just me.
And it's not just you at home. It's everybody. This is just... Freezing was such a strong survival mechanism that every human has it. Like, that's how powerful it is. It's just not built for the world we live in now.
That's fair.
Right.
That's completely fair.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of those self-defense classes, let's say someone does those weekend classes.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, God. Do you think they actually have stand a chance against a violent encounter?
So it depends on the course, right? If the course is 2 weekends of kicking pads and dudes in big pillow suits, no.
Yeah.
But if the course is holistic, if it has threat assessment, situational awareness, boundary setting, communications, de-escalation, learning what your goals are, right? Because I think a lot of people, they think self-defense, they think win. Like dominate and beat the other person, like in a martial arts course.
Yeah.
That is, a win in self-defense is anything that ends the encounter. Right? So, do I think a person who took 2 classes could go beat up a BJJ champ? No. But do I think they could learn a tactic to make that person like stop so they could get away or lock a door or get backup? Yes. So it depends on the encounter and it depends on the course. But there are a lot of really... I actually got in trouble for my publisher being too negative. But there is a lot of bad courses out there because they're like, all you got to do is like poke him once in the eye and then give him 2 kicks in the groin and then safety, right? Break this board. Here's your yellow belt. And those are not great. But if you're going to learn strategy as opposed to technical response, you will have a higher success rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I recently started doing those Ryan Reacts things. Like I just
Sure.
I see all these self-defense and like, man, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, brutal.
And it's like, oh, just do the whole cat thing, the cat meme where the cat hits the other cat.
Yeah.
And it's like, and this guy just drops. I'm like, I know it's good to build confidence by selling a little, but
Yeah.
now you're overselling. This girl thinks like this is gonna TK someone. Like, oh my gosh.
Definitely, I think we're going to get to it. There's definitely some false confidence in it. But also, I think that the other side of the coin is also, you can't have, like Joe Rogan literally just said to some lady, you couldn't beat me. I'm like, if she poisoned your drink, she could beat you today. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
In a MMA fight, there's no way she could win in that. There's weight categories for a reason. But if you change your definition of a win from dominate to survive, you get a bunch of other options that pop up. And that's what we do with self-defense, right? Here's how improvised weapons work. Here's how to create a barrier. Here's how to draw witnesses, that sort of stuff. Because we have this frustrating thought process because of Hollywood and movies and martial arts. And, I grew up with the Power Rangers and Karate Kid too. And we think that like we are Rambo. We're just one person army. But no other group in humanity works by themselves in high stress situations. Even the smallest special forces unit I know is the SAS. They work in groups of 3. These are the hyper predators of the human race. The best trained, the most fit. They still work in teams of 3. So why are you trying to take care of stuff by yourself?
Ego, maybe?
Ego, selling, marketing.
Hollywood,
right?
Bruce
Monkey see,
Lee.
monkey do, yeah.
Bruce Lee, Donnie Yen takes 10 guys, which is also on my episode 2 one.
Donnie Yen still, but again, and that's okay. Donnie Yen was my favorite part of the last John Wick movie, not Ballerina, the John Wick 4.
Oh yeah.
He looks so smooth.
Yep.
But that's not going to help you in a rough and tumble, I'm dragging you by your hair into a van kind of situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you do need help.
Yes.
You're really good at segues because the next question is...
I read the questions. I did my homework.
By the way, if you get invited on my show, you get the questions ahead of time. I learned from my girlfriend to just like don't like offset people with like, oh, that just came out of nowhere.
I don't mind that, but I do appreciate this.
Yeah. So speaking of false confidence, are most self-defense programs selling false confidence? Yes. And how do you make sure you aren't one of the slash McDojos? Because Rob from McDojo Life, he said, he's like, after a few years, these things won't exist. This channel, his YouTube channel is like, I think it's 10 years straight running now. Yeah. And there's still limitless material for them to work on.
The problem with the martial arts, combatives, and self-defense market is that there is no regulation. There's no like overseeing board so people can make stuff up. Mm-hmm. Right? Like if you had you're trained, but let's say somebody wasn't trained. They could be like, I'm Bill and I do Bill's Kung Fu style.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to be like, no, you don't. Right? So that can happen. So I do think there's a lot of false confidence. And the red flag you want to look for is anybody that tells you something's going to work 100% of the time is lying.
Full of shit.
Yeah, exactly. It's inaccurate. It's not true because everything has a failure point. Every single the best technique and the best art, whatever your holy grail art is and everything else is BS, there's failure points in those techniques. And you know that if you spar and train, right? The issue with a lot of the self-defense programs is there is no active resistance training. So whether that's sparring or scenario or
stress test,
there's no kind of stress testing, right? And so that's the ones that are building false confidence. They're the ones like, oh, you just do this, this, and this. And I'm like, it's almost like we're going back like the death touch stuff. Right?
I think it still exists, actually.
Oh, of course it does. Yellow bamboo still exists and all that kind of stuff.
Actually, like my last guest, Nick, he told me, like, so there's this guy who taught me the 1-inch punch. If you hit it on the right spot, the guy's heart explodes.
Yeah, no. If that was true, there'd be so many exploded hearts in bar fights. It's the same thing. Like a lot of people will talk like neck breaking as like a high end use of force, and I'm like, if you do this, like if your neck broke this easy, you wouldn't survive a chiropractor appointment.
Yeah,
right. There's lots of stuff that people like to make up. It's because they haven't tried it.
I think that was like an 80s, 90s movie thing that was like whoosh. And I don't know.
Big time.
I don't know. What's the most dangerous BS you ever seen a martial arts instructor teach their students? And there's plenty of material to come from, but you got to pick your top 2, 3.
Sure. Again, that's like you said, McDojo has a whole channel on this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think I'm not gonna use a specific example, but I'm gonna generalize. Any instructor that cannot get out of their worldview into your worldview is the worst advice you can get. Right? So I am a 6'1", 200-pound man. I'm a big guy. If I tell my daughter, oh, just do this, it'll work because it works for me, that's not good. Right? Because she can't pull that sort of thing off. So I think any instructor that's like, they can't understand that your life is different than their life, they're building it's just a terrible program. So in that area, the advice I've heard, like I've seen instructors, so don't let this happen to you because you don't have to. But I know of an instructor was grabbing women by their
vagina.
Yeah.
Right? Say as much.
Yeah, so you're grabbing them by their bathing suit zone and was like, this is what it's going to be like, so I have to do this. No, you don't, right? So I think really pay attention to if you're looking for self-defense classes particularly. And also, I'd like to point out that if you do self-defense long enough, it eventually becomes martial arts. Right? So the self-defense questions eventually get answered, and then it's okay, what if the person's trained?
Yeah.
Right? Because, again, a lot of the people, if we look at the Joe, I'm not trying to pick on Joe Rogan, I don't care about him either way, but if you look at Joe Rogan, you're like, you can never beat me. Sure, in that straight fight. But are there other options, are there other ways we can get out of this?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, weapons, anything like
that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, you're so good at these segues because, like, what would you teach women that you would not teach men? And why?
Great question. It's not that I teach them separate stuff. It's that I focus on the crimes they're more likely to face. Because again, right, self-defense is crime avoidance, not fighting. I like to say that self-defense is closer to safety training than martial arts. Because the goal of self-defense is no incident happens, not when something happens, do this.
Yeah.
So I like to make fun of like karate a little bit, even though I'm taking some karate right now. And you don't take a WIMIS course, a workplace hazardous material information systems course, and like when this comes up, you high block and punch it back on the shelf, right? Yeah. They teach you how to make sure that stuff never falls off. That's what self-defense is. right? So I think I kind of lost around the question, but
what will you teach women that
Oh,
you
sure.
teach us guys? Yeah.
so what I do is I focus on what they're most likely to run into unless they're giving me other information. So with women, I work a lot more on what we call predatory violence, which is the person wants something from you or they're trying to kill you. And with men, I work more on what we call social violence, which is like ego stuff, territory stuff, rules stuff. I'm not saying they don't overlap, but in general, men normally face like the, hey, what's up, bro stuff.
Yeah.
And women tend to more face the, I'm going to assault you, I'm going to kidnap you, whatever.
Gotcha.
So with the men, I'm focusing on like de-escalation, how to calm things down, how to look for exits, how to get beside people and move. And with women, I'm kind of doing the opposite. I'm more teaching like how to draw witnesses, how to get grabs and holds. Because when we look at the crime stats, look at how violence actually happens.
Mm-hmm.
Men aren't walking up to women like 1, 2, 3, low kick, 2, right?
Yeah.
They're grabbing them, they're dominating, they're yelling. So we teach stuff like hair grab, wrist grab. And if you're a dude with long hair, I'll teach you the hair grab too. But it's more about, my stuff isn't cookie cutter. It's more about the individual that I'm working with, right?
Personalized, yeah.
So for example, I'm off to Darwin, Australia. I've read all the crime stats in Darwin. So now when I go teach the course, I can have informed decisions on why we're doing what we're doing. So it's not that I'm not teaching both things. It's just we're prioritizing
Gotcha.
what they learn.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, for what they're going to probably encounter.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Well, I know your backstory, but
Sure.
What is the one real life-changing incident that changed the way you teach self-defense today?
Sure. Can I do 2?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know what else. So first one, obviously, I talk about ad nauseum is I was stabbed at a bar.
Mhm.
I've been stabbed multiple times, once in the face, once by a fork, and then the one I talked about is the one that got me in the leg that was going through my neck. I'm not going to regale you with the whole story. It's a little long. But that was one of my first switches was, hey, how come, like I already had 2 black belts at that point in time. And I had no material on how to deal with a knife. In Edmonton, if you don't know Edmonton, people like to stab people here. So
Great promotion for home.
hey! So that really changed my thought process on like what we should be talking about. So even in my intro program, we discussed knife in the second class. Because if we're looking at street violence, people aren't walking up and trying to win an honorable fight. They're trying to beat you as quickly as possible with whatever tools they have. And they'd rather intimidate you down because even though in the martial artist kind of power fantasy, it's going to be like this fight. For the predator, it's easier if you just submit or comply. So why would I hurt you if I can scare you? Right? So a knife comes out as a threat as opposed to intended to be used. You could talk yourself into a stabbing, though. I did. So when the weapon comes out, we're going to pay attention to what's going on. But so for me, that was the first one, was getting stabbed, not knowing I was stabbed. I'm very lucky that I had both my anecdotal experience and the camera view of what happened. And they were very different things. Adrenaline is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Stress is crazy. The second one was, even after I had that figured out, I was teaching more women's self-defense classes. And then that's why I now have this distinction between predatory violence and social violence. Because I went and taught a course. I had 30 women in the course. And I do like a feedback at the end of it. And at the end of it, they're like, this sucked. I was like, oh, how come? Because I was teaching like I was teaching men. Right? And I was giving them like bar fight scenarios, like, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was so bad that I did a course again for free because I felt so terrible about it. Spent that time researching. Now I work with like some of the best in the world, Tam Yard-McCracken, 500 Rising. And I'm really trying to get into the space of like women's self-defense. I work a lot with Indigenous people too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the thing that we want to point out, because obviously I'm not a woman and obviously I'm not Indigenous, is there's 2 types of knowledge. There's what we call knowledge about. That's research, that's school, that's learning. And there's knowledge of, which is being in that experience. So I like to tell people, I have knowledge about your situation, but I don't have knowledge of it. Right? So I've done the research. I know like statistically, like on an educational side of things, I get what's going on. But on the opposite side of things, I have never lived your life.
That's true.
Right? So and this is where I think self-defense instructors, I'll explain to you.
Well, yeah, that's the hood thing we were talking about. That's the hood thing. Yeah.
But yeah, well, I will keep talking, whatever. I'm pretty loud. So when we're looking at the changes that we're trying to accomplish in these self-defense things, it's really dialed into like, what is your experience? And even though I'm the expert, that doesn't mean I gotta minimize your experience. Like, I don't get to tell you what it's like to be you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't know what you're like. I don't know what you went through. I don't know what discrimination you might have faced. I don't know what hardships you've been through. And I think this is where instructors mess up. And especially because, like, I'm very trauma aware when we're dealing with people, because I work with a lot of people who've gone through stuff. And you got to be very cognizant of that. So the two major things to go back to was being stabbed without having any information, and learning that I don't know everything, no matter how much I study.
Yeah.
Those two things really changed the way that I deliver courses.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you know, I teach Muay Thai.
Yes.
You know, every once in a while you get like a Taekwondo student. It's like, man, I thought I knew everything, and it's like no, it's like striking's one thing, and then when you get to the clinch part, he's like a younger, fitter guy. He would start blacking out because he didn't, because he just couldn't handle it. I'm like, yeah. There's always things to learn. So I'll leave it with that.
Well, even I agree. Like, so I was mentioned. So we have the Institute of Honor Defense, and we have a bunch of coaches that teach there, and one of the coaches is a karate guy. I'm like, show me some karate.
Yeah.
And the first form, I was like, oh, I could actually add some of this stuff to what I'm. So you can always learn more, like you said, right? But don't think, like, BJJ likes to say they're everything, Muay Thai likes to say they're everything. Every art needs another art to supplement it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
No, definitely, for sure. Survival. Is it strategy or technique?
Strategy. 100%. And this is the thing, right? I have a pyramid that I normally share in my presentations. The bottom part of the pyramid is permission. You have to give yourself permission to use the stuff you have, because we've run into people who were trained, but didn't actually want to hurt somebody. And so then the person violated them, and they didn't fight back, even though they had the skill to do it. So you have to have permission first from yourself or whoever to do the thing you're going to do. If you don't believe you're worth defending, you're not going to defend yourself. Then my next thing is strategy, right? Technique. The way the martial arts is traditionally taught is we teach you this, and this, and then you go find out where it works.
Yeah.
I'm proposing the opposite. I'm not saying that top down is bad. I'm saying bottom up. I say your strategy gives you your technique selection. Does that make sense? So because if you're only looking for like a jab or a low kick or a clinch or a takedown, you're missing all the other things that are popping up. Right? You're missing potential like arm drags or whatever. So we want people looking at the totality of this stuff, and that's strategy, not technique.
Yeah.
But your techniques will build your strategy, right? Okay, I need to get this person on the ground, or I need to get to that door. Then I'll be, okay, so then I'll punch, circle, low kick, so I grab the leg and run, right? So the techniques are still valuable, but by themselves, they don't work. They're parts of the equation, they're not the equation.
Oh, yeah. No, I completely agree. Like, I think... I don't want to ramble too long, but like,
That's fine.
when I first started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I kid you not, for like 3 months, it was just armbar from guard. But how do you get there?
Yeah.
What if I'm not there? What do you do in half guard? What do you do in mount? I don't know. I hope to God I get the full guard. I get that armbar that I know.
Yeah.
The one technique that I know is like, it's just like, it's just crazy how like the traditional way of doing things, like,
Yes.
and like, I hope you figure it out. Like, okay. I guess.
I hope so too.
I hope so too.
Could you maybe coach me a little bit more? That'd be great.
I could ramble on about that one too, but I'd rather not.
I don't know. I also do BJJ intermittently, and I don't know enough about it, but I do think it could be taught better. I think there's a better way.
That's the whole other thing. With my coach Joe Badesky, and does it more ecological approach.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, that eco is really on the forefront.
It's on the forefront, and that's probably like another hour and a half thing.
Yeah.
Maybe when we come back from Australia, we'll go on that.
Sounds
there. But we'll get on to the next question. Are you worried about someone trying? Have you ever worried about training someone who might use what you taught them for all the wrong reasons? It's something that a lot of people talk about too. I think it was on Penn and Teller. Like, you can't just assume that your student is always the good guy.
Correct. And you can't, even in a self-defense situation, assume you're the good guy.
Yeah.
There's lots of times where people think they're being reasonable, they escalate the situation.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. I'm worried for sure, but I'm lucky that the people that are looking to cause harm aren't coming to self-defense classes. They're going more to MMA. They're going more to boxing. These are not a shot at the arts. I love the arts. But if you're looking to be a tough guy and like dominate, you're not coming to a self-defense class. You're going to go to some kind of more martial arts class.
MMA, I guess?
Yeah, MMA is not every, and I talk about this in a lot of different areas, but not just because you do martial arts doesn't make you a saint. Right? So lots of bad people go to good classes and take their stuff. So I'm not as worried, but we do pay attention. Like I take people out of seminars, I booted people out of classes because they weren't the right vibe.
Yeah. No, I totally get that, and I do see that too. Like I'm like sometimes I'm kind of concerned of teaching some kids certain things because I got a feeling you're the bully in school, and
Yeah.
yeah, I know it's tough for me too as a coach too. It's like he's a kid, but I know he's probably the bad guy in the karate kid once. I was like,
He's your Johnny Lawrence pre-Cobra Kai.
yeah, pretty cool guy. Let's see here. I did have a game for you, but somehow it didn't see an email, so we'll just quickly get to ChatGPT.
Oh, we're doing a game.
We are doing a game. So I'll just type this in ChatGPT, but we're gonna do the tier list game.
Okay.